Hi, everybody. Welcome to Classics You Slept Through, the book podcast where we read you classic books and then we talk about them. And today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a book. I'm your host, Kyle Davis, along with a girl who definitely only has one set of arms, not two, my sister, Meredith Davis.
It'd be so useful if I had more arms.
It definitely would. I mean,
God.
That's why, you baby wore, right? I mean, we baby wore as well.
My baby, yeah.
Yeah. You throw the baby in and you have your arms free instead of using arms to hold a baby. Just strap them.
It's amazing.
It's fantastic. Highly
Except you drop a lot of food on their heads.
They don't mind and they don't remember. It's perfectly fine.
Drop so much food on her head. She's making so much noise right now, too.
Which is fantastic. We like having the third host to the podcast. It works well. Well, today we are talking about our new book. We just started book number 7, Mare. That's a lot of books that we've read.
It's episode 45.
Episode 45. We are steaming towards the big 50. I don't know if that's a real milestone or a fake milestone or what. You know, if we count our bonus episodes, next episode would actually be 50. Or if you want to count the trailer.
We didn't count those?
This would actually be 50 if you count the trailer.
So we didn't
number those?
Bonuses,
they were just bonus 1, 2, 3. And then I dropped the bonus index last time so that people could find our first 6 books a little easier. Nice. Well, now, if you just go back one episode, you'll find this book. So today we are talking about A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And you've never read this book. This is a new one to you.
No. Very. Very. Genre and content, the specific book itself, the author, other than the fact that everyone knows Tarzan.
Right. That's sort of his most famous book.
Yeah. But yeah.
It's been a few years since I've read this, but I have read this before. I enjoy it. It's good. So, should we get into it?
Yeah.
All right. So this book, today we're talking about chapters 1 through 4, and this book kicks off with a foreword. And the framing device of this book is one that we've seen before. So this book, in the milieu of the book here, Edgar Rice Burroughs, using his real name, is posing as a nephew of, or extended relative of, this John Carter, our main character. And the book is written as Edgar Rice Burroughs finding and then publishing these manuscripts of John Carter's after Mr. Carter's death. And we saw this same style back when we read Island of Dr. Moreau, which was a nephew again of Prendix, right? Who found Prendix papers and then published them at some point to prove that his uncle wasn't mad or whatever.
So where did those two books line up in the chronology? This one come first?
No, this one would be second.
Yeah,
so
way second.
Moreau was Moreau is late 1800s.
Yeah.
I think. So this book was actually originally serialized in 1912 in a magazine, sci-fi magazines, or adventure magazines, I guess, really back then. It was a serialized story and then compiled and published as a book in 1917, which the time frame matters in a way. We'll talk about that in a sec for historical context. Dracula was sort of similar in that it was diary entries and post-published things, but Dracula was different because it had multiple voices. It did not have this framing story. There was no, Jonathan Harker's son wasn't putting together all of these disparate accounts from various people, right? So this is single narrator, autobiographical from the point of view of John Carter writing his memoirs and then published by Edgar Rice Burroughs, his quote-unquote nephew. All right, so as we said, Dracula didn't have this kind of multiple accounts. So that's where we leave it. So Edgar Rice Burroughs is telling us the story of his Uncle John Carter. In the foreword, he sort of introduces him to us, that he was this, former Civil War officer for the Confederacy, and then, kind of grew up seeing him around, and then he goes off to New York, buys a home, and then Edgar Rice Burroughs gets a call or a telegram, hey, I need you to come to New York to see me. He arrives, finds out from the man at the station that John Carter is dead, and he opens up this safe, which he has been told contains, the papers that he is to be left, and he's got very specific instructions, including how to deal with John Carter's body once he has died. Mm-hmm. And he very specifically says, I don't want to be embalmed. You need to take me to this special tomb I have prepared. And we close the forward learning that this ventilated tomb has a lock which can only be opened from the inside. Dun, dun, dun. Is John Carter really dead?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, is John Carter really Jesus?
Oh, well, I don't think Jesus he didn't really care about the lock. He could lock it from the outside of Jesus. He opens it up anyway. So John Carter's a step down from Jesus, and that actually will kind of become a theme through the book. Well, we'll see that John Carter is very godlike throughout this thing. But we'll get there.
Godlike and humble.
Extremely. He's extremely
humble. Bragger, anyway.
Exactly.
Humble brag.
So that takes us into chapter 1. So now we're actually reading the manuscript of John Carter. So now the narration voice switches from Edgar Rice Burroughs to John Carter himself. And we kind of get, the first chapter, we get a little bit of back history on what John Carter was doing and how he sets up. So it's just after the Civil War, like literally 1885, immediately after the Civil War. And he goes to Arizona.
No, sir.
What?
That's like 20 years after the Civil War, 1885.
No, it's 65. But it is 60. I'm sorry. Did I say 85?
You said 85.
All right, well, it's 65. In the book, it is 65, right?
66.
Well, no, because he goes immediately
March
in 65.
3rd, 1866.
Oh, okay, you're right.
I know. Well, I'm looking at it.
Well, in 65, he goes to Arizona to prospect. 66 is when the actions that we're picking up the story. Okay. So he's been prospecting for a little while, right?
So we're
yes, because late winter 1865 is when they strike it rich.
Okay.
Right? They uncover $1 million. So anyway, post-Civil War, immediately after the Civil War, he sets off with another Confederate officer, this guy named Powell. They go to Arizona, and as we'll see in a sec, all of these things this is kind of autobiographical for Edgar Rice Burroughs. But he goes to Arizona with this other guy, Powell, and they begin prospecting, and they end up striking a vein of gold worth over $1 million.
This is our second prospecting book.
It is.
Our first one, they were digging for gold.
This is true. So I think we're seeing a theme here around the turn of the century. So there's a couple of things here that I want to just point out a little bit that I found interesting in setting this up. So this, as I said, this book was originally serialized in 1912 and then published as a complete volume in 1917. And we see our hero of the story is, this resplendent Southern gentleman. He's a Confederate officer. At this point in American history, obviously, we don't quite revere the Confederacy, shall we say, like we did around the turn of the century. But this time period is sort of the first big wave in American history of the lost cause narrative of the South. So this was the narrative put forth by Southern historical revisionists saying that, it wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights, and it was, we were in the right, and the
states' rights to own other humans.
To own other humans. Exactly, precisely. And even though all of the statements of secession explicitly state slavery as in an indelible part of their existence and their economies and blah, 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 but, revisionist history. So
I remember learning that.
Oh, yes.
In our school, I remember learning like the top 3 reasons.
Oh, of course.
And slavery was not at the top of those reasons. And then as a young person, I felt like this, oh, thank God, because my white guilt's been killing me. Woo! I'm so glad to know that it wasn't the main reason. And I can see why they did it. It does make fragile white people feel so much better.
So this effort began immediately after the Civil War, but it really didn't take off until the early 1900s. So this is the sort of first wave of this kind of really becoming popular in American society, was primarily because a lot of Civil War veterans were starting to die off at this time. And so to keep the memory of the South alive, these efforts were really put in. So I found this interesting because, Burroughs himself was born in Chicago, but he had a lot of family in Virginia. And he really revered and kind of identified with the Virginia side of his family, and had that sort of that martial spirit, and that they were manly men and war fighters and whatnot, very Virginian. So as we see, he set John Carter up as a man of Virginia, right? Well, his father, this is interesting. Yeah. So Edgar Rice Burroughs' father was a Civil War veteran, but he fought for the North.
God, why would you want to represent the winners? Let's talk about the losers and all of this. Exactly.
Well, maybe it's because his dad had enlisted in the army in New York, had seen action like at Bull Run, and had almost been killed. Like he was one of those, you always hear about the Civil War stories of, the near misses, or the guy getting shot up 10 times but doesn't get hit. So his father actually was in a battle, I think at Bull Run, and a bullet passed through his coat and killed the man behind him.
What?
So Dad's got like PTSD. Eventually his dad is mustered out of the army. I forget my research, the exact reason, but then about a year later is then granted a commission and comes back in as an officer. And then I think he's not on the front line so much. I think he's like a quartermaster supply guy at that point for a couple of years, until he finally gets out as a major. So Burroughs, kind of, I think, following in his dad's footsteps, he applies to West Point, but does not get in, because only the elite of the elite can get in. So he fails the test, and
they don't do that anymore.
They also don't give you a single test, apparently. But I'm a good test taker, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway.
Well, I'm a good test taker too.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
I love taking tests. Then I buy myself a blow pop afterwards.
Oh, okay.
And, positively reinforces the test.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Burroughs doesn't get into West Point, but he still wants to be in the army, I guess, like Dad. And so he enlists, and he's like, you know what? The best way for me to work my way up to be an officer is if I take a really tough assignment and do well. So where does he get posted?
Arizona.
Uh-huh. He gets posted to Arizona, and he's out there fighting Indians and, settling the territory or whatever. There was a great quote that he said that he chased many Apaches, but luckily for him, he never caught any. So now we see in John Carter, as we'll get in chapter 1, he does chase some Apaches and gets the better of them, sort of, right?
So he's really out there. You're telling me Burroughs was really out in Arizona.
He was really out in Arizona.
He was really fighting the indigenous population out there.
Right.
And yet I feel like he gets stuff wrong about about the population in that part of the country, at least from what I've read.
Well, he said he never caught any, so perhaps he never actually, right. He also wasn't in the army very long. So he, I guess, had heart issues. Of course, I read another source that said that his dad had some political pull to get him out of the army. So, I don't know. So he wasn't in very long.
Heel spurs.
Right, so he wasn't in very long. Mm-hmm. But, it's just interesting that, we've got all these connections. Dad served in the Civil War in a New York regiment. John Carter moves to New York. We've got the Arizona connection from where Burroughs. So this is almost an autobiographical book, and makes you wonder, did Edgar Rice Burroughs actually go to Mars?
Well, I mean, that's a given.
It has to be. Well,
he knows all about the people that live there.
Right.
He can tell you all about the landscape, so it's clear.
It's clear.
I mean, otherwise...
We'll see in a chapter or two here. how much he actually knows about Mars. But anyway.
I mean, write what you know, right? I mean, that's the rule. Write what you know. Mars. And then the veracity of it is you can create a more believable world. So for my master's, I took a fiction writing class, and I love writing, and I always have. And in this fiction writing class, I created a character, and I had this whole idea of these short stories that would be connected in a whole world. And in the vein of writing what you know, I based a lot of the town and scenery image on our hometown, so that I could describe the streets and the bell tower above the bank and like what our town looked like in the story. And you do peer review or whatever, and people are reading it, and more than one person got it. They're like, is this in the Old West? I'm like, no.
Oh, wow.
Is this in outer space? What? Have you never seen a town? Like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, it just seems like it could be in another part of the world, or maybe otherworldly. I'm like, it's a bell tower. It's because you were getting it chime at noon.
You were getting it reviewed by those coastal elites. They don't know what real small town America looks like. That's what it is.
And a girl who sat next to me, whose goal was to like be published in the New Yorker and stuff, she would lean over and she would touch my arm. She'd be like, "I get it. Don't even listen to that." I'm like, "Yeah, girl,
get it." Oh my goodness.
Anyway, write what you know, and people will still think you're practically on Mars.
Right, exactly. Unreal. Which, speaking of which, do you know the town's the square? They've taken out that little. Do you remember how you used to have to like drive to the middle of the square and then stop and then make your turn?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've totally taken that out. You just kind of.
What?
Yeah, it's weird now.
You didn't take out the center thing, though.
No. But it's like a more normal intersection, I guess. It's not. It's not the cool like drive to the middle and stop, which always freaked me out as a kid.
I don't know if that's technically you're supposed to do. I thought
there was a line. No, there was a stop line. There was a line painted. There was, yeah. It always drove me nuts because I've got like the agoraphobia and I don't like wide open spaces. So like sitting in the middle of a intersection just stopped, kind of like I'm like I don't like this.
Is that part of agoraphobia? Wide open spaces?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I thought it was like people.
No, it's wide open spaces.
I don't know.
Fear of people is just called being an American, isn't it? Anyway.
As if you're David Bowie.
Anyway. All right, so John Carter's down in Arizona prospecting with his buddy Powell. They find gold. Powell goes off. He's like, hey, I'm an engineer. I know what equipment we need. I know where to hire some dudes. I'll go get it. So he goes off. Long story short, Carter, sees Powell and he's like, oh, something's wrong. He hasn't moved in 3 days. I better go check it out. Rides off, finds Indian tracks. Turns out, descends upon a camp. We get the very Han Solo Star Wars, John Carter racing down, firing his guns, like screaming, and the thousands of Indians get scared and run off because they think it's the army arriving.
Humble brag.
Exactly.
A smarter man wouldn't do such a thing, but since I'm not smart,
right,
I just hero charged into.
I do the bravery thing all the time. Yeah. And it's not really bravery; it's just what I do. And then later, I realize I was really scared in that moment, but fortunately, I wasn't smart enough to process it. Yeah, it was. Come on, man.
Blah.
He already has superhuman strength because he, from horseback, reaches down and lifts a man by his pistol belt and throws him on the back of a horse. I don't know if you can single arm curl, like, say, 160-pound man, just boom. But John Carter can, while riding on a horse.
Maybe the guy jumped a little.
Well,
also, that pistol belt. Ooh, is that strong?
He's dead. Powell's dead. We'll find out in a minute.
Oh, it was Powell.
Come on.
So fully dead weight, just scooping it. Here we go.
From horseback, the ab strength to lean over, reach down, grab the belt, throw him. Yeah. So John Carter's already have superhuman strength before we even get to Mars. So he rescues Powell's body and ends up in a cave, and that closes chapter 1. So already, we jump right into this rollicking action. There's no letting up.
No, like personality profile other than, his extreme feats of strength and his.
I'm awesome. That's John Carter.
But I don't even realize how awesome I am till later.
Right, exactly.
Oh, so dangerous.
Why did I do that? Okay, so that brings us to chapter 2. And this is John Carter he's in the cave and something's weird, right? Like he's feeling sleepy. He wants to lay down. So eventually he does, and now he's paralyzed. He can't move. So something weird is happening here. He realizes very quickly.
Are the vampire sisters there? Because this sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar. And he does hear shuffling behind him. But he's paralyzed and he can't turn. And his face is facing the cave. So he gets the reaction of the Indians who show up. They look in the cave. They get spooked by something. And they get out of there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's laying there and he knows something's up. And he's absolutely got to move. So now we get... Not only does he have amazing physical strength, now we see the sheer power of his mental strength, because he says, I couldn't will my body to move, but I used so much mental energy and forced myself. I was able to stand up. Except he doesn't stand up. He actually separates his spirit from his body. So he's standing there.
Ooh.
Yeah, he's
Dr.
naked,
Strange over
looking
here.
down at his body. And he goes outside, and, there's nothing more beautiful than an Arizona evening. So right what he's obviously seen a lot of quiet Arizona nights. And he looks up, and he sees Mars, the red planet. Now, have you ever looked outside and seen Mars looming in the sky?
Yeah.
Have you?
Haven't you?
No.
What?
It's just a planet. It's just a twinkle, right?
No, it's definitely got a color to it.
Does it?
Especially when it's really, I don't know the term for it, in retrograde. I don't think that's right, but that sounds smart. But definitely, especially with Dad, being who he is, and when Mars is super close, you could totally see it.
Can you? Because I am picturing, maybe he's thinking of, a couple of years ago we had the blood supermoon, the blood wolf supermoon, remember?
Oh.
In January.
Yeah.
Was that 19, 18? I forget what month it was. But
It looked like the world was going to end.
That was cool. I mean, that was a big red thing. You could see it. And that's kind of what I think he's trying to describe here. This, I've never looked outside and seen Mars, looming like a large object in the sky. Maybe it's just me.
Well, no, it's it's a tiny, I feel like my memory of it is a tiny, orangey dot, far, and you're like, oh, is that a star? Is that a plane? Is it moving? And it takes you a while, and then someone like Dad is like, oh no, it's Mars.
Well, Mars calls to him, being the god of war and all, and he's a fighting man, and the only thing he knows. So he reaches out his arms, and Mars pulls him to her. He feels himself racing through space.
Aww.
So that brings us to chapter 3, and now we're on Mars, and he's waking up, and Mars apparently, I don't know. This is, again, did Edgar Rice Burroughs really go to Mars? He says it's covered by moss. I've seen the pictures from the Mars rovers. I think it's pretty much just
mossy.
Dust and dirt. Yeah, not a whole lot of yellowish
moss-like
vegetation. Right.
Moss needs moisture,
very strange,
though. Right?
Right. So
this Mars doesn't really have moisture.
No, it does not.
As dried up lake beds.
We think, right? We think we've discovered moisture may have been on Mars, but
right. But also in the book, he talks about dried up lake beds.
So at least he is correct on that.
Yeah, and just milk-giving plants, which is gross.
What's cacti? So he's trying to move about, and he finds that when he stands up, he sort of is propelled into the air and crashes to the ground, and so he can't move, so he has to learn how to walk again. So he's starting to crawl. So we get a little bit of a theme here, and at least a plausible-ish explanation for his feats of superhuman strength, because the gravity on Mars is much less than that of Earth. So he's got that right, actually. Mars has about 38% of Earth gravity.
And so you really would launch yourself into the thin atmosphere of Mars, should you?
You would. Now, if you spend extended periods of time on Mars, you're going to also lose muscle mass and bone density, being in low gravity. I don't think John Carter is going to lose much muscle mass over 10 years on Mars. He's going to remain this.
He's probably going to gain muscle mass on Mars.
Right, exactly.
It's John Carter.
Let's get Mars swole.
He comes back to Earth and he just sinks like a rock.
He can't move anymore. So, I don't know. This probably is out of your time frame, but when I was a kid, I used to watch Buck Rogers, the late 70s, early. Buck Rogers, the 25th century, the Gil Gerard starring series. But anyway, they had a character who was from a high gravity planet. He was a villain in one. They usually did sort of like the 60s Batman. They did like two-part episodes all the time. Little two-part story arcs. But they had this villain in one story arc who was from a low gravity planet, a high gravity planet. And so when he came to Earth, he was superhumanly strong. He would just crush things and tear doors open, and he was pretty scary to, young 6-7-year-old me.
Did he mean to do it, or was he like, "Hey, I'm home"? Whoa! And he rips it off.
No, he was a bad guy. He was a villain. Oh. He was smashing stuff on purpose.
Okay.
So I suppose there is some basis that John Carter would be strong and able to do stuff in a low gravity environment. He's also naked, which is a little disturbing if you think about him crawling along on the moss and unable to stand. He's very, very naked. Which, this is important because, do you know how warm it is on Mars?
Well, he says that the temperature changes are extreme.
Yes.
Depending on, where Mars is in its orbit. So he says it's extremely hot and then extremely cold.
Well, the average...
But in reality,
the average temperature of Mars is negative 81 Fahrenheit. That's average, so I don't know how extremely hot it's going to get here.
He's never comfortable,
I wouldn't be either. Yeah.
And he needs blankets. He should just immediately
I think
die.
He would, yes. Well, the lack of oxygen, I think, would do that too. But, spoiler for later in the book, we're going to get to that. We'll get to the lack of oxygen. He does not neglect that, fortunately. Just other quick Mars facts. A day on Mars is about 24 hours long, so it's going to feel normal to him. But a year on Mars is 687 days.
God, 2020 would last so long on Mars.
It would.
It would be terrible.
Yeah, they're still dealing with it on Mars. They're not enjoying it. Okay, so anyway, back to the story. Enough with our Mars fact finding mission here. So he's jumping around, he's learning how to walk, and he sees this wall in front of him about 4 feet high, goes over to it, he looks in, it's this glass-topped enclosure full of eggs, and some of them have hatched. And so he finds Martian babies, and they are just weird-looking, they're hairless, they're light yellow-green, their heads are much larger than their bodies, which... like human babies have weird-shaped heads that don't fit their little tiny bodies. So, he's doing what he does. They've got little cup antennae on their heads for their ears. Their eyes are tiny and, close together. Their faces are kind of elongated. And anyway, they're kind of weird-looking. And they got 6 arm-leg things, which he says the middle 2 they can use as legs or as arms. So... they can either be like a 4-armed dude, or they can be a 4-legged dude. So,
it'd be good to have the options like that.
It is.
They're not just extra arms; they could be extra legs.
They could. So, would you wear shoes or gloves on your middle pair?
Oh my! I guess it would depend on my plans for the day.
You do a lot of running or doing a lot of grabbing, yeah. I suppose.
Maybe I'd wear roller skates on 2 of them just in case.
Well, he's there, he's checking out these little kids, and he looks and he sees now there are the adults. There's a group of about 20 adults coming towards him. They're riding these 10-legged weird creatures, but they're these huge, imposing, 15-foot monstrosities of dark green, and they're bristling with things all about them, and they've got spears and guns and all sorts of things.
Well, and they were riding on. Did you mention
the 10-legged creature things? Right. So, which he says is a feature of everything on Mars, that they have multiple arms and legs. Because
they're
why
just
not?
Martians, Kyle. They're not monstrosities.
Well, but why does everything have to have? Like, we have humans and dogs and cats and whatnot that only have 4 legs or 2 arms and 2 legs, 4 appendages. And we have insects that have 6, and we have arachnids that have 8. Like, we have multiple many-legged things. But he's just like, everything has more legs. Just the way they are on Mars.
It's easy.
It is.
It's easy.
So he jumps around a little bit and
impresses them all.
Right. They're like, what is this? This tiny little naked thing that's like leaping and jumping.
It's like when you have like a little bug in your house and you're like, oh, I'm gonna squish it, and then it leaps away and you're like, ah!
I don't want to touch this
It's like
thing.
10 times more scary.
Exactly.
Because it can leap so far.
Right. So that's basically what he is at this point, right? He's just a bug.
Yeah, exactly. He's creepy and gross and weird. He doesn't have enough arms and legs, and he jumps really far. And he's naked.
Well, they're naked too. They're just wearing like straps and pouches and things like that. Jangles and jewelry.
I guess that's true. I picture them having like an exoskeleton type of body.
True.
Like, I guess got skin and they're hairless.
Right, they're hairless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the exception of their ornaments, all were naked. And they've got tusks. We forgot to mention they have tusks as well, which are pretty scary. All right, so he kind of impresses them, kind of communicates with the leader a little bit. He hands them a bracelet, and John Carter puts it on. They're kind of gesticulating and grunting to each other. They don't understand each other, but they can tell each other are intelligent, which is, I guess, good.
They exchange smiles.
So they smile at each other, which is good that they know how to smile. And, because smiling is aggressive in some animals here on Earth. They bare your teeth and they get aggressive. But the Martians, I guess, understand it and see it as friendly.
It seems it doesn't really mean the same. It doesn't necessarily mean goodwill, as we learn. It is kind of perfunctory, he says, because they don't find joy and laughter in the same types of things.
Right. Not quite. Very martial, as we'll see. Martial Martians. Kind of makes sense. But anyway, John Carter puts the bracelet on. They kind of reach understanding. The leader throws him on the back of his mount, and they ride off. So then we get to chapter 4, and we get to the Martian city. And the first thing that we notice is that this is kind of a fallen down, dilapidated city. And we quickly realize that these Martian warriors who have taken John Carter in, they're sort of squatting here. They didn't build this. This isn't their civilization. They're just using a lot of the buildings.
And we know that because the buildings are not sized for them, and they also look very much like regular English human buildings.
There's desks and chairs and a stage, But we'll get to that. We'll see. Well, if you look at the cover of the book, it's kind of obvious, but we will get to that. So we also learn that the leader of the Martians is named Tars Tarkas. We get his name, in sort of John Carter flashback. Oh, later I learned his name is this, but anyway, so we start to differentiate the Martians. They're not just a massive horde. They have some individuality to it. He gets shown off to this gathering of Martians. He has to demonstrate his jumping. He's trying to walk. What's that?
Sock.
Yes.
He has to sock. Which means jump.
Sock. So he socks. He socks pretty well. Could be sack. He could be sacking. I don't know.
Sack. Do you think Martians talk like that? Sack.
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 Could be sacking. Oh my goodness. So last night, I got a quick segue. daughter was doing a project. She's virtually joined the local 4-H, and they do like craft projects and whatnot. Yeah, so it's kind of fun. But so they're doing it in the kitchen, and I have it set up for them, and I'm kind of coming in and out of the room. And anyway, I just caught. It's so nice to be back home in Pennsylvania because they were about to show off their coasters. They had to show off their coasters. I was like, oh yes, I'm home. Yes. I'm home. We're showing our coasters. Yes, the coasters. Anyway, it was great.
Push it in front of the camera. I can't see your coaster.
Yeah, push your coaster.
Push it.
Oh, it's delicious. I love it. Anyway, what color did she make her coaster? All right. So he also, in a demonstration of martial prowess, he lays out one of the Martians. He boom smacks him in the head. The dude, he knocks him flat out. So. They love it. They're like, dude, this guy's a fighter, even though he's this tiny little thing. Like, we love it. So
and he's hilarious.
Yes.
Because they think pain and physical beatings that's their humor.
Right.
Which, I mean.
Sure, why not?
Come on.
Why not?
Slapstick?
Exactly. We have sort of the same thing.
Yeah, kids love that
20, 30 years ago, you just kick your dad in the nuts and you win $1 million on America's Funniest Home Videos, right?
Step on a rake. Dude, I can't watch that stuff when people actually get hurt. It is not funny.
Anyway. So that takes us to chapter 5. And he is taken in by a female Martian because, the men aren't going to take you in. Come on. He's given to her. She's been assigned. Right, and she's going to take good care of him because the men don't take care of anything.
Sola.
Sweet Sola.
Sweet Sola.
So he kind of gets, they put him in a room. He's got blankets. He's got a dog with him, for lack of a better term, right? Dog. He's this Martian creature who is to guard and watch him.
He's the size of a Shetland pony. Kind of looks like a frog, except that his jaws were equipped with 3 rows of long, sharp tusks.
I don't know how you do 3 rows.
So
that would be
of long, sharp tusks. Maybe they just all
stick
out. They're like out straight.
I don't know. It's very, very bizarre.
Kind of like I was picturing because when I was reading this, I just watched the episode of The Mandalorian with the frog woman.
Oh, very nice.
And little Grogu's trying to eat all her eggs.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
He's a bad little kid.
He's so bad.
I haven't watched today's episode yet, so don't. Anyway.
I haven't either, so don't worry.
Right.
I'll always be behind you. I actually wish that you and I could watch it together because unlike most people who don't enjoy people to talk to them while they're watching, I've always enjoyed going to movies like X-Men or whatever with you because you know about the universe and you would lean over and you would be like, oh, that's Nightcrawler and his backstory is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay.
There you go.
Got it. Yeah. Nice. So I don't get all the meshing of the worlds as much. I see everybody's excitement on Reddit for like
Ahsoka.
What was her name?
Ahsoka.
Yes. And Ben's like, so who is she? I'm like, well, she was in Rent and she's Cory Booker's girlfriend. He's like, no. That's not what I mean. I'm like, I don't know who she is in the Star Wars world.
Oh my goodness. We could make the Star Wars podcast, but
anyway.
Yeah, well, Disney Plus has that watch together feature. We could just do that. That's fine.
We could do that.
Yeah. All right. Huh. Anyway, back to Mars.
Anyway,
a planet that is not in Star Wars. So he basically, gets some food and some sleep and decides, he tries to get away, but the dog kind of follows him. But he's like, you know what? Again, humble bragging. I have ever been prone to seek adventure and to investigate and experiment where wiser men would have left well enough alone. So I'm so brave and adventurous to the point of, a regular man wouldn't do these brave and wonderful things that I do. They're far wiser than me for not.
Was Burroughs the inventor of the humble brag? Ooh.
I will tell you, so I read this book, I read the sequel, and I tried to read the 3rd book, and it is so thick by the 3rd book. I stopped. I was like, I cannot read this. This guy is perfection. Like, nothing is difficult for him. Nothing gets in his way. He is, so it does get worse if you continue the series to my recollection.
He and Mina should get together. She's the perfect woman. John Carter and
she's
Mina.
Too good for him, and and he's a Southern gentleman. So, and as we see, our Southern gentleman cavalry officers, they never end up with the too good women because they end up just moving down to the bayou.
Who does that?
What? Who does that?
Who does that?
Our Baudelaires do.
Baudelaire.
Yeah. So it's all, see, it's
not Baudelaire, Robert.
Well, no, not Robert.
Baudelaire had the boat.
Oh yeah, Baudelaire had the boat. What was her name? What was our heroine's name?
In The Awakening?
Yeah.
Edna. Like Nana's name.
Yes,
Edna.
that's right.
That's why you can't remember it. You blocked it out. Oh, saucy Edna. Think of Nana.
Yeah, Pontillier. That's what I was looking for. I was searching my Cajun names. I was looking for Pontillier. It's the classics you slept through expanded universe. It's all connected. All these stories. That's what it is.
Have you read the Pixar theory of how all those are connected?
No. Oh, I'd love to. That'd be good. Because they all are.
You should look it up. The Pixar theory.
John Ratzenberger's the connecting thread to everything.
They all take place on Pizza Planet. Well, back to this book. In this part, I want to, before we move too far ahead, there's two things, because you already brought up the temperature of Mars. He at least makes mention that it's extremely cold at night. How cold do you think extremely cold has to be if it's already negative 87?
It's getting super cold. I mean, he's very obviously, Burroughs is very obviously making this Arizona. Right? I mean, it's the desert. It gets cold at night. And then it gets hot during the day. Like,
I don't see that connection at all.
No. So which brings up the question. Is John Carter really on Mars, or is he just in Arizona?
Dun, dun, dun.
Perhaps we shall see.
He's just tripping on peyote in the desert?
It could be. You never know. He did have that mist in the cave. Somebody was back there smoking something.
Yeah. The other thing I think about that is sweet about this part is that even though Mars is devoid of, or supposed to be devoid of, humans like us, right, and human emotions, and they don't act that way, Sola, our female character, is full of empathy and care and companionship and kindliness and sympathy and affection, unlike everyone else.
Right.
So maybe Sola is the Mina of our book here.
She could be.
In some way.
But she's seen as weak in her society, and so, exactly.
Clearly she's the woman character.
Be.
And her attention to John Carter's bodily wants are unfailing.
Oh, no.
Unfailing.
No. Have you?
Says it right there.
Have you seen the Key and Peele sketch with the two anthropologists in the 1800s? Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
I think so.
It's their culture, old boy. That's what we're getting into here, right? It's the local custom. All right, so then we get to chapter 6. He, at the end of 5, crawls into this building and he meets what he has earlier described as the only mammal on Mars, these hairy ape-like creatures. These 6-armed apes, the white apes.
The white apes.
And it's got a weapon, it's got like a club, it's coming after him. And they're fighting.
2 of them.
And turns out that his dog protector comes, but as well as a little party of the Green Martians, because as he hits the ape and knocks it out, which he's getting good at, just swinging and throwing punches. He hears laughter and whatnot and looks out, and there are Sola and Tars Tarkas and some other warriors come to hunt him up because, Sola realized he was gone, her tender heart. She had to go find him, so she set off of her own accord. Mind you, the only woman, she decided to come. She wasn't asked to come, but she decided just to come along anyway, and they found him.
The fight is brutal. I don't think we should skip over how brutal that fight is.
Yes.
I was kind of taken aback by the sudden description of the extreme violence of like the blood and the eyes being squeezed out of his dog's head, and it was a little surprisingly brutal. And then they want to kill his dog. After reviving him, they're like, "Oh, everybody came in and they rapidly revived the thing that saved me, only to then want to club it because it lost."
Right.
But then he saves it.
Right. So his dog, they're about to shoot it, I guess because it failed in its mission? Is that the implication here?
I thought it was because he lost the fight or the battle or whatever.
It could be.
Maybe...
I mean, I was thinking too, like he was supposed to watch John Carter and John Carter got away.
Well, he was watching him. We went with
I
him.
suppose. He did go with him. But anyway, John Carter, feels loyalty to this creature. He stops one of the other warriors from shooting the dog, and that gets this guy mad. But Tars Tarkas stops him and says, "No, kind of says, let him alone, let him do his thing." So he's getting some respect from the Martian chief here, which is good. This is gonna save him later and pay dividends.
So he ends up with Sola, a mother figure, and then this creature, which he's like is totally not a dog, is fully dog.
Right. At this point, we can just say it's a dog. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. He gets some love and loyalty and gratitude and all those kind of characteristics on Mars. So.
Right. So he's kind of infecting the Martian society with his human frailty at this point.
Which, if you're going to write a book that's totally science fiction and quote unquote out of this world, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you prefer this genre more than I do, you can't do it unless you make connections with things that people know about. So you have to be able to identify in your own life in literature in general, and even literature like this. So sure, they're green and have arms and whatever, and no, they don't have human emotions, except this one.
Right.
And this creature is like no other creature we've ever seen, and it's not a dog, except that it is. Because otherwise, if it were fully foreign, I don't think we could read it.
Exactly. No, you're 100% true. So, I mean, that's why in science fiction, aliens are generally bipedal and look like humans. And I mean, some of it is just limitations of you got to have a man in a rubber mask to make an alien, right? But it is true. Like if they don't exhibit some kind of connection, some kind of common thread, it's impossible to read, right?
Yeah, because you can't. I mean, I guess you could have a book like, I don't know. I don't even know. I was thinking James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, which has been some people called virtually unreadable, but I don't think that's because the characters in it lack any sort of or anything you can identify with. I think it's that you just can't read it. It's just gobbledygook. The sentences don't make sense. There are words that don't exist in it, things like that. But yet there are people, shout out to some of the people I know, who have read it multiple times and written a PhD dissertation on it. So somebody can do it. But
yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that has just a completely foreign society. Even the ones that do. So, I mean, you think about, Star Trek, for example, right? All the alien societies are basically humanity, with a little twist. They're not, they're like 1 degree of separation from Earth culture. Like they have some weird little tick about them. But otherwise, they're basically human.
Yeah, they're just more evil or more kind or devoid of emotion and fully use logic or whatever.
Those characteristic traits kind of ebb and flow as the plot really dictates, you know what I mean? And they become more human-like as you go along. Yeah, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head of a completely alien society that would have no connection. I mean, the only thing I can really maybe say, like, Ender's Game or something, or Starship Troopers, where they have sort of a hive mind, insect-like thing where they eventually kind of humanize them in a way. You know, like if you continue the books after Ender's Game, you know, what was just a faceless mass horde of bugs basically becomes a little more developed, but you know.
But at least it's then seen through the eyes
of a human, right?
Humans,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Right. It's not like anybody's trying to write a book from the bug's perspective.
You wouldn't understand it. There'd be no right. I don't know. Maybe somebody has, and I just can't think of something off. You know, I haven't read enough.
And it didn't take off.
Well, it's interesting that we mentioned that Sola exhibits motherly characteristics because she sort of becomes a mother here in chapter 7, and we find out how Martians. So they lay eggs, and they have this winnowing process where they only select the best eggs. You know, eggs take 5 years to incubate, but before they even put them in the incubator, they've been in storage for 5 years. And they select the best ones out of that, and they kind of, you know, go all the way down to find, like, the best 100 to put into the incubator so that when stuff comes out, they've got the best sort of crop of babies. And then they raise them as a community. They just sort of pass them out, and they're like, I don't know who laid this egg, and I don't know who fertilized it. And, you know, you couldn't pick out all the men you've slept with out of a crowd anyway, all the eggs you've laid, Sola, so just take this baby. You know, so
you get to pick them out of like as they run by, you just gotta grab one real quick.
Exactly.
Release the babies.
Yes.
Just grab one and take it home.
Yeah. We also get a little glimpse of larger Martian society. So they're not just one tribe; they're sort of a tribe of tribes, and Tars Tarkas is sort of the head chieftain. But we also meet Lorcus Tomel, who is a Jed of sort of a sub-tribe. You know, I guess one of Tars Tarkas' bannermen. If you're watching, you're watching Game of Thrones.
I don't think anybody's doing that anymore.
Not anymore.
They shot themselves in both feet.
They did. And does anybody even care if Martin writes the next book? Is anybody? It's been like 10 years.
Has anybody checked on him?
Point?
Anybody called? Like,
no.
Hey man,
he's just raking in that HBO money. He doesn't care. Like, he's whatever book.
I can't imagine the pressure on him after HBO shot themselves the last season. I can't imagine the pressure on him. Or maybe there's no pressure.
He's like,
he can just.
Yeah, what they did, I can just do something different. He's like, I mean, he said before they even finished the show that, well, I'm not going to be beholden to whatever they do on the show. Yeah. I can just write what I want. It's sort of like screen testing, right? It's, you know, you throw it out there and you see how he's getting some feedback. He's letting the public be his editor, and he's like, oh, all that stuff we did in the show, oh, I'm not doing that in the book. He's scratching out.
He's like, wasn't my idea. I was thinking of something totally different.
So anyway, maybe it's the smartest way to write a book.
Could be. I want to mention one thing about raising these babies and this community of raising babies. Mom has always told a story, and I don't know, I've never heard you recollect
I may not know this story.
She said that when you were 5, she told you that she only got to keep you for 5 years, and every 5 years you get a new family. And so Mom and Dad were assigned 0 to 5. And then now that you were 5, you would have to go live with someone else from 5 to 10. And this upset you.
Well, I will contrast that.
I
remember that. I remember her telling me that story now. I don't remember ever getting upset by it.
Oh, okay.
So I have told my son a similar thing. I told him when he turned 6 that he's actually, you know, we're not his parents. He's actually an alien child that we discovered. And when he turns 6, his alien parents are going to come back for him. And he was like upset the first day. And then the following day, out of the blue, he says, hey, Dad, I'm really excited to meet my alien parents. I'm ready to go. I can't wait for my birthday. Yeah, exactly. He was like,
didn't think I could tell you, but that will solve a huge mystery for Mom, because she was like, look at this text Simon sent me about how he was an alien baby and his alien parents were coming to pick him up. She's like, he's so weird.
Well, you know, he is my son, so. But yeah, so
it's your fault.
He's full in on it. He's ready to go, man. He's ready to get picked up.
Now you're gonna make him feel like he was abandoned by his alien parents when they don't come.
Oh,
and he's gonna be like, They called.
They,
I hate to tell you
they've
this.
been watching you.
Not
they really want
coming.
you know.
God. Oh my God.
Anyway.
The things that we can do to our kids. The power that you wield as a parent is incredible to me.
It really is. It's
like
you can totally screw your kid up.
It seems unfair.
It seems unfair. And we don't even check. There's no qualification. There's no test you have to take. It's just you got a kid, great. You can screw him up or make him good. I don't know.
For some people, they're so easy to make, and then they just let you keep them.
Exactly. It's wild.
I mean, it's not true for everyone, but they just they're like, yep, take it home.
Well, anyway, so that's what they do, what the Martians do. They just grab them, they take them home. And so we finish out chapter 7 with just sort of a footnote, just a throwaway line. John Carter. Oh, yes, by the way, the Martians, they speak telepathically, and I developed the ability to do so. Not going to talk about how, not going to talk why, just oh, by the way, I can...
It's super easy.
I can totally... And I can understand everybody that's around me, but you know what? People can't read my thoughts unless I'm directing them to them.
And at first I was upset, but then I realized it's a clear and distinct advantage in every way.
It is.
And a really good plot hole.
And so you know what I've realized? John Carter is Bella from Twilight.
Aww. See, I don't know what that means.
Perfect.
Because...
Oh, well, sadly I do. So Edward Cullen can read minds, except for Bella's.
Oh, which is why he wants her so much.
That's why she's mysterious. So John Carter, and she's also like the greatest thing ever and is perfect. And
did he ever consider that she didn't have thoughts?
Oh, I don't know.
I can't read your thoughts. She's like, huh?
John Carter probably does, though. And they're probably the best thoughts.
Yeah.
All right. So that takes us to the end of this section. And we'll have more next week. What are we reading for next week?
I don't know, Kyle. You tell me. I'm reading chapters 8 to 11.
So that's probably what we're up to. Oh, you're reading. Did I switch it up? Yeah, I did switch it up. So I kind of alternated the order, I guess. So yeah, so you are going to read. So for next week, we will bring you chapters 8 to 13 of A Princess of Mars. Before we go, we have one more thing to do. We have the mailbags open. So we received a very nice email that says, "Hey, Mare and Kyle, love this podcast for a variety of reasons. The first of which is because Mare is something. I can't, it's unintelligible. But you guys are doing an awesome job, and I look forward to the new episodes always." But yeah, it just says that basically they really enjoy this podcast because they said that reading these books, that the podcast helps them with rereads, and just our discussions open up more from both of the books that they've read, even having studied The Awakening in college. So it's just kind of nice to get some encouragement. Now that email is sort of a gimme throwaway because it's from Mallory. So thanks, Mal.
Hey, girl. Oh, I'm her mom, petite moutarde. I'm her little mustard.
There you go. See, I don't speak French, even though I did my Cajun for The Awakening.
She legit follows everything, and if it sucked, she would be the first to tell us. So,
well, there you go.
Because my best friend cannot hide her true feelings or emotions. She'd say it. She'd be like, "Yeah, I love it. It's great."
And if you can't see the video because
lying.
this is a podcast, you're making a face while you say that. So that's
our streamers could see it. Hey,
they
streamers.
could. Hey, everyone on stream. Which I don't know. What do we got? 0 still? Yeah, we still got. Oh, we got 0.
Hey,
yeah. So
we could pretend. You don't know.
So that is a point. So we've been experimenting, dear listeners, with also streaming these podcasts. So you could actually watch us do these discussions on Twitch. Haven't gotten to the point where I'm reading on stream yet. That is down the road goal once kind of everything is back set up and I have an actual house and all my equipment and whatnot. But, you know, this is just kind of fun.
If we just hashtag it ASMR, we could get
again, I would have to speak really close to the mic and not hit the mic and make loud pops in people's ears, as I just did.
Not necessarily. I actually prefer lo-fi ASMR from back in the early days of the community, some 10, 12 years ago, where people just kind of talk normal in their soothing voices. To me, it's getting way too extreme with the extreme slow speaking that now is suddenly unnatural, which now brings my attention to the fact that I'm watching a contrived thing. But
speaking of lo-fi, I got my Spotify 2020 wrap up, and because I was home and doing a lot of studying, my top genre was lo-fi beats this year. So
what are lo-fi beats?
What are lo-fi beats? Oh my goodness. Me and the anime girls, we're just chilling and studying. That's what we do.
Oh, I don't know the words you're saying.
You don't I will have to send you some lo-fi beats and introduce you to chill hop and other genres like that.
It wasn't just Run the Jewels was your top?
No, it was a mix of lo-fi beats and yacht rock, so I'm keeping it real.
Oh. Wow. Ben and I went on a YouTube journey where we watched Run the Jewels and Colbert and their like duel where they're each other. It's great.
Their free concert was very good too. So anyway, they did a concert on YouTube a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it was really good. I recommend. All right, so that brings us to the end of this week. As I said, we'll be up through chapter 13 next week. Well, not next week. The episode will come out tomorrow, so you will get it next week for us in real time, but tomorrow you will get it in your feed up through chapter 13. So if you want to send us an email like friends and family, like Mallory did, thanks Mal, you can do so at you can do so, I guess, at the email address, cystpod@gmail.com. Gotta say at with the email. Anyway, that's our email address, cystpod@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on social media. We are at cystpod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And until next time, it is December, so we are getting into the holiday season. Teachers don't want to really teach anymore, and we're just doing all the assemblies. So head on down to the auditorium because the principal has hired a Robin Williams impersonator for you.
Nice. That sounds fun.
We'll see you.
Peace. That does sound fun.